The devil doesn't fear your talent, your money, or even your prayers shouted loud. He fears the moment you truly surrender to God, because that's the moment your power becomes untouchable. You see, the enemy can handle a believer who talks about faith but still lives in fear, who posts scriptures but panics when life gets hard. But he trembles when you stop fighting in your own strength and start walking in full obedience to God's will. That single shift, surrender, is the thing hell fears most. Because when you let go of control, you step into divine authority. When you say, "Not my will, but yours be done," as Jesus did in Luke 22:42, all of hell is reminded that obedience defeated it once before in Gethsemane. The devil knows that as long as you're wrestling to have things your way, he can manipulate your emotions, your fears, your pride. But the moment you choose obedience over outcome, you become dangerous. Fierce, a believer who trusts God in silence, who praises Him in pain, who stays faithful even when nothing makes sense. That's when your faith stops being theory and becomes warfare. The first hidden reason he fears your surrender is because obedience unlocks heavenly backing. Heaven doesn't move for opinions, it moves for obedience. When Abraham raised his knife over Isaac in Genesis 22, the devil saw something terrifying. A man willing to lose everything just to please God. And because of that obedience, the angel stopped his hand, and a blessing was released that no demon could curse. The devil knows that kind of obedience still shakes the spirit realm today. He can't curse what God has commanded to be blessed. So he distracts you with alternatives, with almost obedience, doing what's comfortable instead of what's commanded. Because the moment you do exactly what God says, you align yourself with the same authority that crushed him under Christ's feet. The second reason the devil fears your surrender is because peace follows obedience. The devil's environment is chaos. His nature thrives in confusion, anxiety, and noise. But when you rest in the will of God, even while storms rage, you destroy his playground. That's why Philippians 4:7 says the peace of God surpasses all understanding. It's the kind of peace that doesn't make sense, yet it silences every demonic whisper. Satan cannot manipulate a heart at rest in God. He loses access when your emotions no longer control your obedience. When you stop reacting to what he sends and start responding to what God says, you break his cycle. That's why he sends waves of worry, random conflict, sudden fear, to shake your focus and steal your peace. But the moment you choose stillness, you remind him he's already defeated. The third hidden reason is because surrender gives you discernment. When your will dies, your spiritual ears open. Jesus said in John 10:27, "My sheep hear my voice." You can't hear God clearly when your own desires are too loud. The enemy knows this, so he fills your mind with noise, with endless what-ifs, with counterfeit options that look divine but pull you out of alignment. But when you finally surrender, your spirit becomes tuned to the frequency of heaven. You start discerning what is God and what is not, and that terrifies hell. The devil's strongest weapon is deception. If you can see through it, he's already lost. So he fights your surrender because discernment exposes him. The fourth reason the devil fears your surrender is because it makes your suffering sacred. Pain without purpose breaks people, but pain under God's hand builds power. The devil knows that every surrendered trial becomes a testimony that multiplies faith in others. That's why he tries to convince you that your pain is pointless. But Romans 8:28 still stands. God works all things together for good to those who love him and are called according to his purpose. Your surrender transforms loss into strength, rejection into redirection, waiting into preparation. The enemy fears believers who suffer well because they become unbreakable. Every tear you cry in obedience is a seed of authority he can't touch. The fifth reason he fears your surrender is because it silences his accusations. Revelation 12:10 calls him the accuser of the brethren, and he thrives when you live in guilt and condemnation. But when you surrender fully to grace, you stop arguing with your past and start walking in your purpose. The devil hates when you realize you're forgiven, because the moment you accept grace, shame loses its grip. He wants you to keep replaying your mistakes so you never realize the cross already canceled your record. A surrendered believer no longer negotiates with guilt. They rise in righteousness, and hell can't stand that confidence. The sixth reason is because surrender births supernatural strength. You remember Paul in 2 Corinthians 12:9. He said, God's power is made perfect in weakness. The devil can't process that logic. He expects weakness to destroy you, not anoint you. But when you surrender your weakness to God, He turns it into a weapon. That's why the enemy hits you hardest in your most surrendered seasons, because he knows power is forming there. Every time you fall to your knees and say, God, I can't, but you can, the devil loses ground. Your humility invites heaven. He fears that posture more than any loud declaration, because that's the place where chains break quietly. The seventh reason the devil fears your surrender is because it changes your authority in prayer. A surrendered believer doesn't pray out of panic. They pray from position. They know who they are and whose they are. When you pray from surrender, you're no longer begging heaven. You're enforcing heaven's will on earth. The moment you truly surrender is the moment the devil remembers he already lost. Thank you for supporting our channel. Subscribe to see more videos and stay connected with us in the comments.